Hey friends, welcome to part 3 of the Rathalos Armor tutorial, and today we are going to be converting our base into the finished Rathalos Armor. Now, with the size, it's going to be more around this size and with the same amount of details, but if you spend extra hours and a lot of time, you can make it look like this. Or if you're using a larger paper, makes it a lot easier. But today we are going to be folding with this. As you can see, I just have a clip holding into place, which gets us to our next topic about what other, tools or materials you might need to do this tutorial. So we're going to be wet shaping or wet folding. And to do that, we have methyl cellulose, which I have in this bottle. And if you don't have access to that, you can use carboxyl methyl cellulose with water, which is available in every single country. Or you can just use some white glue. Any white glue is fine. School glue, whatever's cheap, whatever you have, get that ready. And to apply it, I like to use just like a brush that I've actually left some glue to dry on the tip, so I can just use that to spread more. And then I have like a little dish that I use to keep it. Additionally, you can use clips if you so require. You don't necessarily need it, but it might help. And same thing with tweezers. You may or may not need it, but it can help. So that is what we're going to be doing. And let's jump right into the shaping after this one announcement. And today's video is brought to you by me with the OBB membership. Meet Kai, who just folded Satoshi Kamiya's Region 2.1, but like many of you, struggled to solve certain parts like the head and couldn't find anywhere for help. That is until he joined OBB membership, where he got a direct line of help from me and I pointed him in the right direction to finish. Just look how happy he is and how cool that region turned out. I've been responding to every comment for years, but the OBB membership lets me help with more specific origami questions. You can even get help from other talented OBB members, some who are award-winning origami designers. Even more benefits await, such as exclusive crease patterns, behind-the-scenes content, and diagram testing. Ready to tackle your own origami goals? Click the join button below and become a member today. All right, first thing first, we're going to do a little bit of dry shaping, and that is going to start with the torso, and then we'll quickly go into the wet shaping to arrange these flaps. I feel like once you have the torso set, it's a little bit easier to then work on the arms and shoulders and waist and legs and all sorts of stuff like that. So we're actually going to start. We have a lot of flaps here. Now in my full folds, I actually didn't really use the middle flap too much because it's frankly not part of the armor set, but because we don't really have to stick true to the armor, why not use it? So we're going to be using it. But yeah, we'll figure that out later. The ones we want to focus on though is the two flaps above it. So these 1 unit flaps here, 1 unit flap here. Basically what's going to happen is these will press forward like this to make the shape of the body. And then the one above it is actually like a transition. But it will also help to hold on top of that. And then this next one up top here will become this pattern, as you can see, like that. And the one up here will become the neck guard. So it'll fold in like that. So that's the rough layout. But the first thing to do is on these, which we actually have, we're splitting it into like 3 stripes because the armor has that. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to take the first layer here and I am going to fold it about 1/3 over the top of these pleats. So be very careful because it's in the middle. You don't want to rip it. So you might have to like unfold a little bit just to start unwrapping like that. And once you get about 1/3, that is where you're going to want to fold, but not like fully entirely. We're actually going to thin this a little bit more than the 1/3. And then as you can see above here, I'm not letting it fold past because again, we're going to use this as a transition, and the same thing on the bottom here. But you want to try to get maybe a little bit past 1/3. And we can adjust this to what you think looks good later down the line. But this is how it's going to start. like this. Try to make it at least flat on this surface because that's what's going to be showing. Right? Once we have that in place, again, like I said, we're going to be folding it in half to make it thin. So we're going to fold back over this way, like this. And just make sure it covers the hinge so we don't see it. And as you can see, we haven't gotten this part centered. So I'm going to have to pull it like a little bit more just so that it's centered over the line. Like that. Make sure the edges here are covered still. All right, so that's roughly centered. Might not be perfect, but good enough for now. And next is figuring out this transition. So I want these pleats to run all the way up until it's underneath this next point. And normally we can just do like a swivel to let it collapse down. But because we folded two, it's going to be like a half swivel and then a half. Actually, it's basically just like a double swivel fold. So it went up one way, and then to fold it down, it'll fold like a bisector, but then translate into that pleat, which will pretty much fold flat as long as this top one folds flat. So we want to make sure it's laying down. It won't, you know, obviously we're not going all the way. We don't have to, but it's going to be something like this. And then on the bottom half, it's going to be roughly the same thing, except we don't have another flap here. So it has to happen underneath this first flap. So if I recollapse these 1 unit flaps here, you'll see how it collapses under, and it's basically that same unit, but out to the side and underneath here. So it hides it a little bit. And that's how it transitions out. I'm going to recollapse this one like this. And now it holds together. So likely this top flap will have to kind of sit underneath our other ones like that. But it's really not that hard of a transition. You just have to get things to fold together all at the same time. And we have a stripe in the center of our armor. All right, so we have the center done. Now we need to do the stripes on the sides. So we've already committed one layer from the side. We have more layers on this side, but it's just one on each. So for this side, all it really is a valley fold inwards, small valley fold. Like this. And again, we're just focusing on getting the center of these two pleats to be nice, because that's what people are going to be seeing, but still be careful in general. The cleaner, the better for this detail. And as you can see, when we do the stripe, it gives a little bit of space between each side. That's exactly what we want. That's one. Now we're going to do the other side. So here. And we're going to valley fold over. Try to make it about the same thickness as the first side, just so it matches. And there we have both done, and now we can fold everything back up. Now the transition for these ones, it's so slight, it kind of automatically happens, but it's just, again, another swivel fold, which ideally is still hidden when you fold this back together. So just like that. Now, because of what we've done, it might not want to stay together, but we're going to be trying to get it to stay together for the rest of their proportions. So just keep that in mind. And then once we use methyl cellulose or glue, it will stay in place. All right, so we have that done. And then ideally we want to start getting the shape of this to be okay. So as you can see, I'm like pulling it in. So I'm kind of forming like a waist shape like that. You know, it's not going to stay now, but that's ideally what we want. All right, but that's enough there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on this layer. So it's not the one that's connected to the transition. It's one above right here. And what I'm going to do is spread out one layer. So I'm going to try to grab inside here. And open it up. Like this. And what our goal is to get something that looks like this. And so with spreading the layer, we want to meet all the mountain lines together. So I'm not spread squashing or doing like a square twist. I am merely pulling open a layer and then kind of collapsing inwards like this, just so it's a bit wider. And then when I start to put it back, we have a little bit of ledge here. Now we're not quite done yet. We're going to work on the other side. Gently open up the layer. Like this, and do the same thing. Like that. All right, so now that we've widened both of the layers, what we're going to be looking for, and if I hold it up a little bit to the light, you can see how we have these indentations of where the layer is underneath, right? We can see that. So we're going to be using those as our reference to kind of fold on. And I'm going to make a mountain fold on that reference right there. And we're going to do this on both sides. And ideally, they're around the same length. If they're not, just try to line them up to be the same length or pull out the layer enough that it's the same length. And by doing this, we get this shape like that. And it's starting to pull this kind of angled shape we have for our torso, right? And lastly, what we want to do is right now we have this triangle that's tucked in underneath like that. We want that detail to pop up a little bit through, but it's not going to exactly sit on top. So I think what we will do here is like squash fold. That way we have this shape defined initially. So let's try to squash fold that. I might use my tweezers for this, but let's see if I can do it without. We'll use it just to be a little bit faster in the tutorial. Or you can just get like a toothpick. Let's open it a little bit. Let it squash. Okay, so now that shape is defined. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten that squash a little bit, about by 1/4 on each side. And that way it maintains the shape, but I have a little bit of room for the center to pop through the middle, just like that. And it's just a small detail. It'll be on top like this. And we have that shape. Now, with that shape, as you can see, it is starting to pull along the next layer. And so what we're going to want to do is now try it. That's mostly because part of this has been unfolded. So the more we fold back, the kind of better this will be. But we want to make kind of a mountain fold here, just to really define where the chest layer is. And so that it almost is like it's laying flat over everything. So there's going to be like a little mountain fold along the edges of the shape here. Like this shape on the side. And I'm just kind of looking to make sure they are about the same on both sides. So this one's a little bit bigger than the other one, so I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. There we go, that's about right. And that will help keep this properly in shape. And then remember as well that later on when we wet fold, this will be sitting on top of the layer like this, and then these will be closed together like that. And now we are on the portion where we're dealing with the top here. And if you notice that if I start folding this down, it will very much help our torso on the bottom, this shape, to take form. So I kind of have to push this down and let it set. Right? Try not to get this creased. But we also need it to be like our neck cover. And so in order to hide this area, I'm actually going to be valley folding down a little bit like this. It's like not exactly halfway of this flap, but it's close. And the idea is that while this is pressed down, this can act as like a cover, and then we can curve it like that. And obviously this is not going to stay for now, but that's the idea. Let me show you the other fold and you'll see it a little bit more clearly. So here's the bigger one. You can see we have our shape here. We have the tiny little guy over there. And then this has, you know, contacted with this flap, and then it's sitting on top of our stripes. And then the way I shaped it is I puffed it out to give the torso a little bit of volume. It's not flat. And then I curved this, but it looks like it's sitting on top because I folded this down and then basically, you know, let these ride up a little bit like this to help with the curve. But since I wet folded it, it stays in place. This one not in place. I want to bring your attention to something else. Is if you look on this Rathalos armor, because of the way we did the rabbit ear, it lets the body layers go wide, kind of like a box, which also adds volume to the body. So you look from the other side, it's kind of like a box, but this covers it. We're going to be doing the same thing. And how that works is essentially you can just glue or methyl cellulose these layers together, and they swing out to the side and kind of help hold everything together while we're wet folding it. Now I'm telling you all of that because I find it easier to do all the gluing here before we continue, even though we might be doing some more dry shaping. All right, and the last thing I think we're gonna do before we get to that is, if you look here, again, I didn't really use the middle flap for much except for this shape right here, but we have these in the front like this. What we can do is, because that basically forms by folding a rabbit ear along this axis, and that way the legs can fold in. to the sides, which is really weird. It's not like a normal model. Now this doesn't have to go too far, and also this rabbit ear will kind of hide underneath our torso flap here, but maybe this will work. Okay, so they kind of angle inward so that you see all the layers on the front, right? Or if they were all stacked together, it would basically be like this, and then squishing up into the torso. We want to make sure this is clear. Actually, originally I thought I hadn't used that flap that much, but I think what this does is this just actually covers up that space of the rabbit ear, and then I just angled it in to make it look like the legs, pauldron area, right? So that we might do that too, because then it's not as wasted of a space. So it hides the rabbit ear, and then we'll just treat it like a belt, or you can treat it like pants and make little mountain folds. But the key thing is we'll hold everything like this as we start our wet shaping. So let's try that out. All right, I have some methylcellulose, and I am going to grab some glue and put that on the side there, and not too much to start because we're going to need to let some things dry. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to be careful to avoid the layers where our waistcoat is, but in these side layers here, like I described, I'm going to put methylcellulose in there and then hold it tight so that it'll dry like that. And then with the glue, because I don't want this to be as wet, is I am going to add glue just into this area so that it'll stay. So let's try that first. I'm just going to add some glue under these layers for the points of the layers we pulled out. And you can see it's not that much. I just want it to start to stay put and like be strong. And then also I'm going to add a little bit inside of that squash fold we had. Also for the same reason, just so it'll stay strong while we're working on it. Like that. Now I'm going to add some methylcellulose. I'm also going to put it on the inside of this layer before I fold it. So let's actually start with that. Let's put some on the inside layers here. This is prepping our shaping. And then I'm also going to put on these side layers over here. And we're going to try to get it into these layers. The stronger these layers are, so basically the more layers you put the methylcellulose in, then the more stable it is, and it's going to kind of act like a, I don't know, almost like a rib cage to give support as we're shaping this. So you have that side done, and I can feel it when I start to squeeze the layers together. I could add some more maybe. And so that I don't have to hold this in my hands the whole time, I'm going to use some of these small clips to hold in place. This might give some wire bite if you made it too wet. So careful. If it's too wet, let it dry first and then hold it together with clips. But right now the surface of my layers are dry, so I know it's not going to hurt the paper. Also, it's on the side, so even if it does leave some teeth marks of the clip, it doesn't matter because it won't be seen. I'm going to add some more on the other side now. Again, this is just on the side, and I'm avoiding the shoulder pads and the waist. We're trying to go in order so that we don't have to do everything at once. Like that. Squeeze that together. Grab some clips. And then I'm also making sure it's out to the side so that it's going to dry in the area I want it to. Now, you notice I didn't worry about this area yet, and that's because I want this dry so I can keep it closed so that everything will, again, kind of help hold this together as it's drying. So maybe if you need a clip for this, you can do that too. But we don't need any glue in here yet, or methylcellulose. I think it's fine on its own. Last area is up here. This is the for the neck that we want closed. And for now, I'm just going to use a clip up here too. I'm just going to clip it across so it's even, like that. And here where we had the glue, it kind of came out. So I'm going to reinforce it. And now we're gonna let this dry, and then we'll come back to shape it once it's dry. All right, so it's been some time. Let's test out how dry these are. And it's looking pretty good. As you can see, I have a little bit of wire bite there, but again, it's okay. It's on the side, and you can kind of just punch it out just because it's not, it wasn't wet on the outside, but that will be fine. Now, what you'll notice is we still have like a little bit of a gap there. Later on, when we fully go for the shape, we're gonna finish that off and make sure it's closed. But this is looking pretty good so far. We have the torso up here, a bit more secure. And we have, this is a bit more steady. So now what we can do is I'm going to lift the corners just a little bit like this. That way, when I fold this down and curve it, it'll look like it's kind of sitting on top of everything. So like that. And when it's on top like this, it's going to look like it's on top like that. Now this detail, we'll probably put it in later, just because we want to set everything else up before we really lock it down. But honestly, we might just lock it down soon, because no harm. That is one of the things in shaping, is sometimes you don't know whether to just secure it or work on it more. But this scenario, I think it's looking pretty good, and we'll still have enough room to adjust the shoulders later. So yeah, maybe we'll go ahead and do that. I think what I'm gonna do first is really make sure the whole body is good to go. So I'm gonna use some clips and hold the waistcoat in place, just so we can really get the body done. And then remember how we want this to be in like that, and then pull outwards toward the torso. I lost the clip there. Let's use a different one. And let's just see how close we can get. So basically, I'm going to use some MC Air glue and just kind of try to lock down the torso all the way. So let's see if we can get that. Get a little bit of glue here. And here, I'm actually going to mix the methylcellulose and the glue. Again, you can just, ooh, that's way too much. You can just use glue, or just CMC or MC, whatever you have available. That's definitely too much MC, but this will help it be a bit more steady. So I'm going to add some on the inside, add some on the inside here, inside there, on the other side too. Both sides. All right, and then I'm going to grab glue on its own. And I'm going to add some under here. Now, the way I know to use one or the other, this is just personal experience on what I think will work and what will stick together. So it doesn't have to be exact. This is not a step-by-step guide. I'm just hoping you understand the concept of what I'm trying to do, and then you can work on it on your own model. But essentially, I'm going to now try to hold in place like this and get this to stay like that, right? So this might take some patience. Honestly, I'm probably gonna have to do this in a few stages, but that's the goal, and we'll come back in the tutorial when I have this set. All right, we are back. Now, I was able to get it with just some patience to stick in basically the right place we wanted. So this area is a little bit more clean, which lets this part angle forward and be above the torso. It's not as defined as like the big one, but this is pretty good. And basically what we want, where it's sitting on top. And then we have our neck. Now I didn't glue down the neck. I just made sure it was kind of in the right area. That way when we fix all this mess in the shoulder area, we have some flexibility to shape that a bit more. But this is a really good start. Okay, so next let's take a look at the legs and waistcoat area. I think we can get started on that. So something about the waistcoat area is we have like this long flap, we have a longer flap, and basically how this works, if I pull over the other model, you can see how far the long one extends. So this one like really extends out and backwards to cover the leg, right? And then we have the shorter one, which part of it becomes a spike, and then these two flaps here, and then that helps hide the transition of the front waistcoat. And then we have this thing, and I finally figured out like how we kind of get that. So there's a couple of things we have to do. So for one of them is, remember how we folded the legs all to be like this with the flaps all the way down, right? And so that's still true. Now what we're going to do with this 2-unit flap is, you can see I already tested it. You basically fold a rabbit ear or 2 valley folds from the corners in, and that will create this shape, which will basically connect over and kind of hide the waist area for that, as all of this stuff is out to the side. And then later on, these flaps will be used to widen and become that waistcoat area. And then we have our legs, which will widen out like that, and we're going to shape the legs later. But for this waistcoat, we want to separate the shorter side from the longer side. And the way to do that is we can kind of just shift this like down, or the waist part up like this. And we don't want to shift it up too much, it's more shifting the other one down. That way it can sit at the waist area that we want it to. So if I get a better grip on this, we want this one to be right around here, and I'm just pressing through the layers. And then we have this longer one sticking out and covering up part of the leg, right? And the other thing is, what I realized on these is we have extra layers, and I should have probably added this to the crease pattern. But we have one more set of layers that we can actually pull out here and turn into one more flap. And this is pretty easy to do without pre-creasing. So just pull that out and you get a flap here, and you just have to line up the mountain folds like this to make one more flap. But even if it's not like super precise, that's okay. We're going to be using this for those spines. So let's go ahead and do that on the other side, as well as spread out the layers so it's the long one is longer. So let me reach in here and grab that layer. I'm just very gently pulling it out, making all the grid lines mountain. And then that will let us pull that into a 1-unit flap. Like this. Try to make it a little bit cleaner. There we go. And then from here we have the shorter one around the waist, and we're gonna pull it up just a little bit to separate from the longer one. And then I still want it near the waist, so I'm just going to swivel and press inwards. Let it adjust. Now when I did that, it like pushed this out, which we don't want. So make sure that's in when we push the other one in. And it'll be adjusting like this until we finalize everything. But something like that is totally fine. We have this up here. Okay, so now we can do the dry shaping for the surface details of this, and we can probably even get to the wet shaping, and then even the wet shaping in this area to put it in the right place. So I think we're gonna have this for reference still. So let's start with this flap. This is the 2-unit flap. As you can see, we get a spike along the middle, but that's not an individual flap. This is actually a lot easier to do than you might think. All we're doing is mountain folding to make this top layer thinner, like this, right? And then basically to make it look like it's sticking out, I'm just swivel folding the other one shorter and using that to kind of make it 3D. So instead of that, I'm basically like doing a crimp to make it a little bit shorter. So it's just like a little crimp on the inside. Just a single mountain valley, and then mountain valley on the other side to make it about even. Like that. And then you just want to make sure those extra layers are hidden underneath this one. And then from there, and this is where the wet folding is going to be, but dry you can still try, is you just try to tuck even more of the paper in to make the spike even thinner. And then with the methylcellulose or glue, all of that will stay and kind of help lift up this spike to make it 3D. So we'll have to unfold a little bit of this and then refold it to get it to actually like be 3D in a spike, but we can do a lot of it dry. I'm kind of just pinching it as much as I can like that. So you kind of get the idea of how this forms. Now for the top of it, we have some more spikes. To make that, we're just going to add a pleat on this bottom one. So it's a valley fold and then a mountain fold like this. So we just valley folded it up and then mountain folded it back down a little bit of ways like this. And then from here, we're just doing some like reverse fold pinches, or still kind of like rabbit ears, just to get these tips to point upwards like this. And that's enabled by the pleat we just made. And then because we pleated up here, we can do the same thing on the top corners, but these will go a little bit more inwards. So I'm kind of just pinching it. It's not really like folding flat or anything like that. It's more of just like a texture, but it makes it look like it's almost like a spike as well. And it also helps because of that pleat. Right? So now it's getting more 3D. Right? So now let's add a little bit of the MC and glue to get this started. I'm going to unfold almost all of it just so we can put some glue underneath these flaps for the spike, because we want them to be secure enough for it to hold. Now, I still have my leftover MC with glue mixture that I had from before, but it had been sitting for a few hours. So it's a little bit thicker. It's like not quite dry yet, which is kind of the perfect consistency of the methyl cellulose with the glue for shaping this. Put that back. And remember, you don't want this to stick to the bottom one because we want it 3D. Now that's setting a little bit. We can actually, I should probably let this set and dry, and then come back to it once it's dry, and it's going to make the 3D part a lot easier to shape. I'm going to leave that there. Next, I'm going to use regular glue for the top horns, because those ones are kind of already holding on their own, and we just need a little bit of something dry to keep them there as we keep working. Otherwise, they'll just get undone really easily. So for that pleat, add a little bit, pinch it back, and then we're going to add a little bit underneath this layer, and then as well as in between the layers over here. That way we can pinch together, and these will stay as well, like this, right? And now what I think we can do is get this part ready, but before we get that part ready, I want to finish off with the flap on the bottom here. Now we notice we have this additional flap. It's 1 unit flap, and I'm actually going to leave that tucked down. And that way I can actually open up the layer here and widen it by unit. See this? Open it, widen it out by unit, and then the rest of it transitions. So it's going to swivel right there where it's attached. And it makes it wider like this. Okay, so I'm going to show that one more time because I did that kind of fast. We have this 1 unit flap. I'm folding it down, then on the top layer closest to the leg, I'm pushing it out 1 unit, and it'll make this new crease. Then I make one more crease from the point into basically a swivel here, and it creates this shape, which is now wider, right? And that's how it matches there, and it'll help cover the leg. And yeah, we just do that on one side. We don't do it on the other side. So like not this one. Okay, now that we have that in place, we can start to get this more closer to the hip. So I'm going to use a lot more of this methyl cellulose before it dries and add it into all these layers here. And a reminder, anywhere I use methyl cellulose, you can always just mix water with your glue. And it'll act similarly, not exactly, but you can do a lot of the maneuvers I'm doing with that, or you can just use glue. Often it's wet enough. All right. Later on, I'm going to want to add some in here just so this can stay put, but I think I'm going to do that when I finish lifting this up to it, which means I need to do the other side first. So let's finish this side. So basically you want to carefully grab all the layers, kind of squeeze them in towards the hip, and then maintain this shape roughly and push it towards the side like that. And I know we haven't shaped the leg yet, but as long as this is like roughly in the position, that's all we really need. Something like this. So it's like down and to the side, a little bit angled. And I am going to have to hold this. Actually, I can probably use a clip in the back here where I'm squeezing a lot of the layers. One key thing is the nice thing about having this open is that's where you're going to hold the model a lot while you're shaping. Yeah, so you don't interrupt stuff. So you can put that there. And even another trick is after we shape stuff, you can go in the back here and reinforce it with some more methyl cellulose. You can do this whole thing even, and it'll be a little bit stronger. Okay, let's get this to finish. And to strengthen that, I'm actually going to use some of the glue on the inside of this layer to hold that shape. That way this one becomes strong too. Right? And we're going to let that dry. And I want you to do the same thing on the other hip. That way we'll come back and it'll be symmetrical, and then we can start on the legs. And yeah, we'll go from there. All right, so I actually haven't finished my other side yet. I just wanted to make like an intermediary 3, 2, 1, restart. Start. All right, so I'm actually not done with the other side yet. I just wanted to show what this part looks like a little bit before it's fully dry. And as you can see, as it's like drying, I'm able to really round it out. And on the inside here, if I can get it to focus, I'm basically using the pleat to help make, you know, the spike look raised up. And so that's the goal of this spike. And then once that's drying, like you can see that now this like kind of swivel that we use to make it appear shorter to get the spike out, like really kind of stays on its own. So that's the goal with this. And then, yeah, once again, finish this off and then do the other side and we'll come back. All right, so we are done with both sides of the waistcoat. And there's just one more thing that we need to add, which I added to this side. And that is to thin out this shape here, and it makes kind of a cool angle. So on this side, it's just standard like this. And all we have to do is on the inside of this layer is we're going to fold a bisector. So it's a mountain fold to tuck it on the inside. Like that. And we get that shape on this side, and same thing on the other. So the nice part of shaping this model is with these flaps, we kind of just do this bisector a lot, right? Like we did it for the spikes. And it's pretty simple, but it adds a lot. Very simple shaping detail. Now, the next thing we're going to work on is the legs. And you might notice that I've already gone ahead and worked on this side quite a bit. And so one thing I forgot is normally when I make tutorials, I actually shape out one side. And then that's the reference for the other side. That also helps me remember how to teach it. So I went ahead and did that for the knee over here and the shin guard as well as the foot. And then even for the shoulder pad up here. Because I think we can get all that done. They're all relatively the same type of shaping. And then once we have those out of the way, we can continue on with the model. But we're going to start with the legs, because once we finish both legs, we can finish up this torso and close off all this stuff here, which is kind of messy. That'll be fun. Now, one thing with the shaping is right now I just have this in kind of a standard pose. Later on, you can give it a more dynamic pose if you want. The nice thing about the way this works is if I flip it to the other side, because we're shaping not on the axis, but on the layer side, when we spread out these layers, it gives us some room to be able to change it. So if I want to bend a knee or twist a knee, right, you can see how even though it's glued, we still have options to shape it and some maneuverability that we'll be able to work on, especially in the hip area. So that's just kind of fun. But yeah, let's get started with the knee pads and go from there. It's pretty simple. One thing I think we should do before we start folding it is just add a little bit of glue into these layers. So if I'm looking at the knee pad here, see how it's lifting up. So we don't want this to lift up. So I'm just going to add some glue into there, as well as just in the sides of these layers a little bit. And that way we can get shaping. All right. So it's not fully dry yet, but I added a little bit of glue just to let it stay together. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make some folds. And so that my hands aren't blocking the whole model while I show this, I'm going to use tweezers. Basically what we're going to do is from the center outwards, we're going to make mountain folds to shape the corner outwards. So it's a very shallow mountain fold. And what you want to make sure is that the angle is roughly the same for all the ones you do. So let me zoom in here. Let's see. So let me start the first one, because after the first one, you're going to try to mimic the angle on all of the others. And so first I'm matching both sides like this. It's pretty close, right? And then for the next one, I'm going to try to match that same angle. You can see actually, because of the paper thickness, it's folding below the next one, and that's how we get like a stacked or pleated armor. So it's this one. Again, try to match both sides. And I'm just comparing it basically to the top one, make sure it's looks good. And then we got one more over here. Now this one, it's kind of the same height as the following one. So that's okay for now. We're still just trying to match the angles on these mountain folds. That's about right. I know I said I was going to use my tweezers, so I ended up not using them. Sometimes it's easier to just use your hands, but whatever's comfortable. Okay. And I think you can tell what I'm doing. Right. So now, because this one is flush with that, we don't want that. So I'm going to fold it. I'm just going to crimp it a little bit lower so it matches about the same, pleat structure as the other one. And then we can kind of fold it in half just to keep it in place like this. Right. And that's looking pretty good. Now for the bottom, we have this longer flap up here. And what I'm going to do is actually just valley fold it up. And I don't want it to go past the height of this one. I'm going to have it like a little bit under, still kind of matching the split between all the pleats, but obviously this one's going to look a little bit different. And then from here, I'm actually going to valley fold up the corners of the bottom, and it's basically a similar angle to what we folded behind. But these ones will be visible like this. And that will create a nice shape. And then when we push it at the bottom, it kind of locks it in place and sets up our knee armor. So then eventually, right, it'll look like this when it's done. Now, we have done the details, but next we have to do the placement. We're going to do the placement of this after everything, because it's easier to just fold all the details out and then worry about the placement. But it basically sits to the side like this, and then you like squish it in. But I'll show you how to do that in a little bit, because we have to do some prep work on these layers. Let's do the shin guard now. So the shin guard, we have the shape that looks kind of like this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it a little bit. So I'm going to unfold this flap, make it just like a regular flap like this. And what we're going to do is squash fold out this squared portion. So basically I can just open up the layer a little bit like this. And in order to squash it, there's going to be one more layer. I'm pushing this one to the left, and then this one here is the one that's kind of stuck that we need to squash fold. And I'm going to make a valley fold under here. And when I make that valley fold, it starts to squash fold. And the squash fold is similar to a square twist. But you can see how now, by folding that down, I can start to squash fold the corner out and get the rest of the squash fold gently out. Now, this squash fold doesn't have to be perfect. This is mostly so we have similar shape around this flat that we're going to use for shaping, like this. And once we have that done, I'm gonna close this back up like that. And originally, I'm just checking on this side, we had just valley folded it to the side. So if I look over here, there's a valley fold here. It just valley folds up like this. And that is the same. And then what we need to do is like free the layer out here. So there's actually 2 layers. We unfold this and we open it up again. We've got another layer right here. I'm actually going to open it up like this. And I think this turns into a, oh no, this is not the one that rabbit ears. So now what we're gonna do is we're actually using this flap as part of our details. And so what I'm gonna do is with this flap, I'm going to rabbit ear it. So rabbit ear like this. And this is like the base shape for our shin guard. Next, I'm gonna want to turn. Maybe this is the wrong rabbit ear side. Let me check this real quick. Oh yes, okay. I rabbit eared the wrong way. Okay. So what you're gonna want to do is instead of rabbit earing from the bottom, so let me show this again. Instead of rabbit earing like that, you're gonna fold the tip up first. And then rabbit ear it. So rabbit ear this way. And the reason for this is, so remember, this is our leg. And from this position, it's not just a simple valley fold. It's like a valley fold while twisting this shape over the leg. So it still uses that valley fold for the most part. So this valley fold for the most part, but we're leaving a lot of what became our squash fold open. And there are 3 like layers here. There's like one up top, one on the bottom, and then there's one more over here, but it got stuck like this. And then we have this section right here. What I want to do with this section is I'm going to make some mountain folds, basically one way like this and the other way like this, so that we can squish in this corner, and that will let us basically tilt this unit about 45 degrees so that it sticks up like this. But we want the center to be as clean as possible. So now I'm going to just widen this area a little bit and make sure there's no extra flaps stuck. For example, here. The corner got sunken and we don't exactly want that. Let me try to pull this out. Essentially from here, so this is the corner. We want the corners to stick out, so I'm just valley folding these flaps down so the corner's still there. This is where we had that extra mountain fold thing to compress it. And then with all that together, rotate it like 45 degrees, like that. And as long as it's like flush like this, you're good to go. Because it's going to sit under the knee like this as part of the shin guard. And you don't have to do exactly this. This is just what I did on the original. And so I know it's kind of convoluted, but when I did the original, I really just free shaped this, trying to showcase as many of the spikes as possible. So if you can't get this exactly, no worries. Just get it something like this and in this position, and you'll be good to go. All right, now the last thing is the foot. So the foot, it's not like a normal foot. It's formed by a crimp. And so what you're going to do, let's look at it this way. And we're going to count the grid. So about 2 grid units up, maybe a little bit less. Or basically it's between the second grid unit, I think. We're going to add a crimp. And the crimp, basically, if you need a reference, you can start at the top of the grid unit, the second grid unit, with the valley fold, like this. And it's not exactly 90 degrees, it's a little bit steeper. And then you're going to valley fold back down along it till it hits a corner. And this is the start of your foot. Now, if you need it to be longer, then you're going to go up even more. So actually, it might be up a whole grid unit. I might be wrong. So it might be up 3 grid units. So let's actually add that crimp to the 3rd grid unit here. So let's try that again. Is that about right? Yeah, and I'm lining it up with the other leg just to make sure it's even. Maybe a little bit too long. So I'm going like maybe it's like halfway between this unit, right? A lot of times I eyeball these. I don't have exact references. Something like this. So the valley fold starts up like that. And then second valley fold goes back down. You're going to crease that because you're going to unfold. And then in between the layers here, you're going to put that crimp back. But it's inside of the layers. So on one of the sides, the creases will change. But it's using the same creases there. Like this. And then you can valley fold these up like this. And I'm actually comparing to my other foot. I think it's still a little bit too long. So I might have to drop this lower. So yeah, essentially what you want to do is you're going to experiment with this crimp until you get the right foot size. And let's see what this happens. But a lot of times this will happen. Not every fold is going to be the same. And so you just want to check the proportions on the fold you're currently working on to get it as good as possible. And what I'm looking for is now I'm looking for the leg length as well as the foot length. Just comparing if it looks correct or not. And this looks pretty close. Because basically the foot shape will open up like that. And on the inside, you're going to make valley folds. Again, these don't have exact references, but it's not 45 degrees. So go a little bit shallower than 45 degrees. 45 degrees would be to here, but I'm not going to there. And then I'm just matching it on the other side. Like this. Oops. Like that. Let's make the foot a little bit steeper. And then for the ankle, I like to valley fold up the hinge just a little bit. This one is like, for some reason, way larger than my other foot. So I might have to check on that a little bit. Like maybe I need my crimp to be steeper for this foot to have a better angle. But then we open this up, we can check a little bit if it looks foot shaped. It's not too bad. I might have to adjust it a little bit on mine, but that's how you do the foot. Not super straightforward, but it's really not too hard. You just kind of have to eyeball it. It's just difficult to give it like exact proportions. Okay, and since we're here, what we can do at this point, just to kind of start it off, is to secure the foot. Like if this is about the length you want it to be, I would add a little bit of glue under these folds for the tip of the foot. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that it makes the paper a little bit stronger, because it's going to be standing. And it's kind of thin, so the paper is naturally weak at this point. I'm also going to add a little bit of glue between these layers for the same reason. It's going to make it a little bit stronger. And then because I might want to adjust my ankle, I'm going to avoid putting glue in the ankle. But once it is ready, I even like to put glue on the underside of the ankle. And that helps lock it out and gives it some more strength. In fact, you can get them so strong that in my original fold, right now I have magnets attached to the feet to help it stand on its display stand. But prior to that, it was able to stand on its own. It could balance on its own. And I think if I just add like a little bit of the level change to it correctly, it can stand up again. Except this is magnetic, so it's not working. But it's like the design itself, if you balance it correctly, it gets really close to standing on its own. Not a requirement, but it's just something cool if you're able to do it. Okay, so let's let this sit for a little bit. Actually, we can do some more with the glue, and then we'll let everything sit and dry, and then we'll adjust stuff from there. And then fold this part out. Okay, so to add more glue, now we have these outside layers. So if you look at how this is done, these layers are strong and together, but I've opened it up in the back. So what you want to do is you want to find a layer in the back that is about, in between all of them, about halfway through all of them. And then same thing with the calf. You want to find that layer. This is very important that you do not glue these together, because these are the ones that are going to open. So I'm just opening them a little bit to understand that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some glue or methyl cellulose and just put it in, a good amount of the layers on the outside here, like this. And we're going to start just with the thigh. And then you want these to, stick together and dry so it becomes strong. But you don't want it to soak through the layers and fold like a stick. So what I like to do is, and this is blocking, I like to try to widen it out like this, almost so it can be flat. And then I hold it with my hands like this so that the layers are together. And then with this, I can actually let it dry like that. And it's going to be chilling like this. So get this out of the way. It's already starting to stick a little bit. So yeah, I'm just holding it like this basically, and then letting it dry like that. And then if I need to add some more, like if some layers are popping up, I know if I need to add some more glue. I'm avoiding the knee area for now because we're going to set that in a little bit later. We're going to do that for the top. of the thigh, and then also for the calf. But the calf, there's significantly less layers. So I think there's only 2 that we can really access without starting to get into the shin guard. Maybe on the other side of the shin guard, there's a few that we can get into like this. But this one we're just going to start because the calf will kind of need the rest of the armor to be in place first. But let's let this dry, and then we'll come back and add some more stuff. All right, I know I said I let things dry, but I think while it's drying, we can actually work a little bit. We can work on this section up here, as well as this. So originally, I think I had told you guys to do a rabbit ear like this. I realized this restricts the torso a little bit, or the hips, because the hinge is underneath. So actually what you're going to do, undo that rabbit ear, and you're simply going to, if the tip is up, right, like this, you're going to valley fold it down, and you are just going to valley fold the corners in, like this. And this way, that can push underneath our like belly armor, and then it still has room for the rest of our hips to push back up into that. And so while we're at it, because we want that to be pretty strong, I'm just going to add a little bit of glue into the corners of the layers here. Just so this won't unfold itself. And then also a little bit underneath, just to keep the shape. Fold it back. And again, I'm not gluing this down. I'm just gluing these corners in. And we're going to let this dry as well while we're prepping. Now for this waistcoat part, as you can see, it's going to turn into like a wider base like this. And it actually has this underneath, which this one I haven't fully shaped out yet. It's kind of cool when it's layered, but you can do a little bit more. I just didn't want to shape it yet because it kind of gets messy. But what we're looking for is this layer, the layer that has the squared off portion. I'm going to lift it up a little bit like this. What I'm actually going to do is, if you notice, we have the squared off portion, and then we have on the sides the angled ones like this and like this. And maybe your flap isn't exactly folded like this, but this should be the structure. What I want to do is valley fold between these angled sections so that it's wider like this, like these are widened out. And it's going to start to fight you because it wants to swivel fold. So I'm going to call this the underside and this the top side, because that's what it's going to be. So the inner side is the underside. I'm going to let this swivel happen on the underside. And the swivel basically is just from the corner of the tip and then going anywhere to the, middle. Doesn't really matter what happens after that. Like this. And then on the top side, I'm actually going to fold a bisector through this flap. It's not in focus. Fold a bisector through this flap. Fold a bisector. And then after I fold the bisector, I'm actually going to fold it back on top of the squared off portion like this. Again, that's the outer side, which is the top. This is the inner side, which becomes the bottom. And this is when we force it to be the bottom. Is the way to get it to be the bottom is we adjust this layer and basically like turn it. So I'm kind of valley folding and swiveling on the hinge inwards. And the motion is you're twisting and pushing up. Twist and push up into the hips to get this aligned. And now you can see it's matching the other side. And what's happening is it's widening out this area for us so it can fold. And the last thing we need to do is mess with this flap. There's not too much special going on here, but I've adjusted the layer a little bit. So instead of being folded this way, I've flipped the crease outwards like this. So originally it's folding here with this is a valley fold. I'm going to change the valley fold to a mountain fold. And when it's out to the side like this, it should feel more natural. You can see the layers are now just like they're not stuck. But then when it's on the outside, I'm going to hold it together and I'm going to valley fold it down and over like this. And now it's like easier on this end. And it'll match a little bit cleaner to the other side. So I lost my swivel here. So put it back like this. And there we have the waistcoat. Made it a little bit too thin. Okay, there's more shaping to do, which we'll have to do once we're like going to finish the hips and basically push this back up into the torso, because right now it's like stretching out. But what I want you to notice is like this area needs to have the layers together. So try to get these layers together like this. And even what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some glue just in the center area here to keep these together. And that'll just keep things a little bit easier when we get to the point of pushing the layers up. Because basically what's going to happen is we're going to valley fold this whole unit up like this. And then like valley fold down these units. So it's like really going to be tucked in. But for now we can just prep this like that. And then maybe this will stay out of the way when I show the rest of the legs here. All right, so now we're going to let this dry. I think I need to add a little bit more glue in some of these layers. And we'll be back to work on the legs a little bit more. And we are back, and this has dried quite a bit more. So we can kind of move on. Now, the next part is still kind of gluing, but this time we are going to lock into place the, I guess, positions of our knee and shin. So for this, I prefer to use methyl cellulose with some glue just because I want it to be a little bit less viscous. And it'll help us kind of compress the layers together. So I'm going to mix this together. Again, you can just use glue and a little bit of water. And then now I'm going to thread it into this area, these layers of the knee. As well as the top over here where it's going to connect the paper, and the bottom of this valley fold. So under here, so you can see that. I don't know if it's going to focus, but underneath here. And you can even put it in the layers underneath here if you really want to be secure. You don't need like too much. And then same thing for the shin. Might as well do it all now. Let's get it into here. Get it into the area under the shin, as well as the layers on the other side here. And on the back. Okay, so there's kind of two things we're doing. For one of them, especially on the shin, I'm going to start it by just compressing it fully together like this. And, you know, just to hold it out of the way, I'm going to use a clip. Now for the knee, because we've already spread out the thigh a little bit, we're going to do the same thing like this, but I'm also going to be pushing more of it into the knee. So I'm going to be kind of in this top area, right? If you watch my thumb, I'm going to like push, see if I can get it focus. I'm going to be pushing it more towards the center of the layers and a little bit like inwards. So it is already floating on the top, but we don't want it too much floating on the top. So I'm kind of squishing it down, but without ruining the creases, right? So I am providing a pretty decent amount of pressure here, but not too much, all while kind of locking it down on the side here, which again, this will widen out, so it's okay if it looks a little bit strange. You just kind of want it centered along the seam here. So you can see on this one, right, it's kind of centered along the seam, and then it's like slightly pushed in there. And that way, once we round out the actual leg, it looks like it's an actual leg. Like this. Now, in the future, this will be on top of this point. Like this point will be inside. But again, we're just holding this one in place for now. This is probably enough in place. Again, I don't want the layer to be stuck together in the back. It's going to widen. We just need this to kind of set as well, being centered, right? It's kind of like that. And once you have it in place, yeah, you just got to let it dry. So I'm going to hold this and let it dry, and we'll come back. All right, we're back, and the leg is more dry, as it is. Let's get our glue ready here. So now we need to work on the shin. And so the shin, it's, again, I think before it was like on top, but this point isn't really supposed to be a spike. It's more supposed to cover the knee. So you can widen it a little bit and just fit it under the knee. And then from the back, we have this, which we had opened up, or that's on the far side, but, or yeah, this one. So it's opened up a little bit already. And what we want to do is, with it being open, we should have a little bit of layers like right at the knee joint. So like right over here. And this area also can be open a little bit. This might help you shape the knee, especially if you're going to like bend it and stuff. So I kind of like squash it a little bit like this. And that kind of helps it to stay open. And if you still have some glue, you can actually just like add some glue like in there just to kind of secure it, and that'll strengthen it up. But similar to the knee, right, on this side where we have the shin, you want to make sure it is relatively close. It's not floating too far. I think it's pretty good. I squished it down quite a bit as it dried. So if yours is like lifted still, just kind of widen, open it, and then squish it down into the shin. But it's looking good. My leg, it's right now, his leg is like broken, right? See how the leg is broken? So right, I just applied some more glue in there. So that's another thing. You just need to look at it and make sure it dries straight. So even that's better now that I've adjusted it. And then by the ankle, we didn't secure that because we were waiting to see if we needed to adjust it. But now I think it's pretty good. So I'm going to add some glue into the ankle and let that dry. Just like this. And that way, once the ankle's secure, you can open up the foot and it'll be good to go. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is on the hips, we're going to push everything back up. And also that's going to shorten our body a little bit, which will fix our proportion. Right now, our torso is actually too long. And that's why our legs look short. It's not that our legs are short. It's that our torso is too long. So all this area here that's stretched out, we're going to be working on pushing it in. And this might be a multi-phased task, but I'm going to just explain it a little bit, at least my approach. And then we'll see. I might have to use some clips to hold things in place while I press everything else. And potentially you don't have to do this in one go, but I'm going to try to. Basically what I can see is the areas that are stretching out, the body out, is like basically over here, obviously underneath the torso, and like a little bit in this area. And so when I notice those spots, that's where I'm going to be adding the glue, or the MC. So for one, it'll allow us to manipulate it. And two, it's wet folding, right? So then once it dries in that position, new position, it should hold. It'll give the paper new memory. But to start, very simply, just add methyl cellulose or glue in those contact points. And then later on, if I really need it to hold a bit better, I'll go behind and add some from behind. But I think for now we can start just here in this area by the waist, in these flaps, and then behind this flap. Okay, so let's start. We're gonna see if we can basically push this all together. So my strategy is to start on the waist guards here and like close this up. You can see how that already kind of shrinks everything. And unfortunately, I can't like hold this all at the same time. So I might need to use some clips. So this is where like if you have clips or wires, this could help, but you might risk like hurting the actual paper. But while that's in place, I want this to go underneath. And I want these to fold upwards. It's going to fold up. Maybe we'll do this part first. It's going to fold up, and I'm going to mountain fold down. So it's going to shorten this waist coat a little bit, but it's going to help us push this whole area into position and kind of set the direction of our hips. And then we'll still have some room to like angle it and shape it later. It's like I don't want this to be crossing the other one. I'm pushing down with force, but like careful force like this. That way I can push this higher. Okay. So this is about the position I want it in, but then I want, right, you can see how I'm kind of ruining the torso here. We might have to fix the torso afterwards. We want this to stay in place. So in theory, I could just hold this, but I kind of lose this portion. So I have these negative clips, so they squeeze closed. I'm going to use them here. If you don't have this, you can just tie this with like a wire or rubber band or a clip or string or anything kind of thin. I like to use this because it's going to hold it really tight. And then I won't let it dry like this. I'll let it sit for a bit, then I'll open it. That way it's okay. And then for the other one, in case you don't have one of these, which you probably don't, I'll show an example using wire. And it's okay using wire in this scenario because we're not putting it on a surface that's really seen. We're just holding layers together. So even if it bites, it won't be super visible. Might be a little bit visible, but this is just to show you, like, you don't need the exact tweezer that I have. It's just, if you want to know what I use, I like to use those. You can get different results sometimes, but pretty much the same. Most people won't notice. So there's the wire. Okay, that's looking good. You can see that when I do this, it like makes the stance of my person, my Rathalos armor, a little bit wider. I think after things are drier, we can like adjust the hips. But it's totally okay that the hips are wide right now, because then we can do like an action stance if need be. And then the last thing I'm going to do while this is drying, I'm going to try to correct the torso ever so slightly. I know it won't stay entirely, but I still, at least since it's a little bit wet again, I don't want it to dry in an incorrect position. After doing that, I kind of pushed this stuff back. So here it's like I kind of missed an area of the MC and glue. So I'm going to add a little bit in this area and hold it. And so it's going to be a combination of me holding it in place and using the clips and the wire. But this is essentially how we're going to do it. And then after this is dry, I'll probably show it. And then I'll show me like squeezing it back a little bit tighter, because it's a little bit more open than I want it to be. But yeah, so we'll let this dry and we'll come back. All right, so it's dry and now we can undo the wire. Like I mentioned before, I already took the clip off the side, but we can see, there we go. So I think I could have probably used a little bit more glue to close this up a little bit more. It's still not like super set, like I can pull it apart. Maybe that's what you prefer in your models. You don't always want it rock solid, which is totally fine. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some PVA and just reinforce everything. But the overall shape is looking pretty good. And then from here, I can also adjust the legs a little bit. I think like maybe this pose would be cool for this one, where it's like out and up in a guard or something like that. That way you can see the shield a little bit more instead of just the default pose. So we can try for that with the legs, which they're already kind of wide enough for. We just need to adjust them a little bit to make it look more intentional. That's very key in your posing, is make it look intentional. You know, that he's actually standing that way type of thing. So just adjusting here and here. And then I think in order to get the torso back to how I wanted it, I'm going to have to do a little bit more work, but I can push this over to the side. And basically now what you can do is we have a little bit extra flap here. If you really wanted, you could either wet fold and freeze the hip to cover the waistcoat, but you kind of want to like close this gap. And the easiest way is just you glue it down like that. So if that's an option that you want, you can do that. I'm going to kind of help it a little bit. But these are sorts of things where like, again, you're going to spend more hours outside of this tutorial, like really tweaking the shaping to make it really, really nice. And that's like the difference between just folding the model and making a really nice one, like my silver painted one. So something like that. Right, I'm actually still going to have to hold this in place. But in terms of directions to finish off the legs, I already kind of instructed you to do that. Get this pose, you know, kind of action stance. So I got to fix my knees and the back of my legs. And basically what you can do here is you want to start to shape it into a calf. So you can like, I mean, I'm kind of just adding crimps, but you can try to get like, there should be a bulge here for the calf and then like a little bit in cut for the knee joint. Again, you should probably spend longer on this than what I'm about to do. We just got to try to force this into place, which is not working too well, but there you go. So like, so you get this like this calf shape. Same thing for the thigh a little bit. You can add some definition in curves. It doesn't have to just be flattened. And then if you need to bend the knee, you can do that too. So you can just like crimp it down a little bit more or press the leg in and just see where the paper wants to go in terms of being adjusted like that. So for here, like this has like way too much outside here. So this needs to be mountain folded in. But then when I do that, I start to get the thigh shape, which is nice. And I actually like the wideness of this. So I'll just leave that for now. And then maybe it's a little bit too wide, so I'll adjust it. So yeah, you spend as much time as you need to Obviously, the more time you spend doing things correctly, the better. When I mean do things correctly is like maybe you study how the ankle is supposed to be shaped and then you work on the ankle more. Just because you spend more time on it doesn't always make it better. But if you do it with like the proper intention, I think intention is our key word here, you can make it look pretty nice. I'm going to reinforce the calf here. And then from here, like the areas I like, I'm going to reinforce it with glue just to let it stay. Be a little bit more protected against stuff like humidity. And then this one is pretty good. There's some extra layers under here. Like all these layers on the inside, we don't really want to see. So you can use glue to keep the layers together or to turn it and have it kind of hide. That's what that's your goal. See, like that. So now it's kind of hidden. And I just hold that until it's dry. Maybe watch like a anime or something while I'm waiting. And then same thing on the other side. Try to like hold it there like this. And then that kind of changes my leg here, but I'll just adjust that back later once it's set. Yeah, so we're going to do these final stages to the legs, and then we're going to move on to the next part, which I think is the shoulder and then the arms. So yeah, I'll see you when this is all dry. All right, we are back and ready to go. The bottom is now pretty dry, and I think we're good to go from here. So I think you can tell it's looking pretty good, right? It looks like it can stand. Pretty sweet. Okay, so now we're going to move on to this shoulder pad. And there's some folding we needed to get done, as well as a little bit of gluing. So let's see. I'm actually going to prepare my glue. Just a little bit. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at these flaps. So we've got two long ones. So 1, 2, and then we've got two short ones, and then one more right here. So we have some interesting things to do. The first thing we're going to do is on this short one, we're actually going to, or this long one, I'm going to convert it to a short one. It's just going to squash down like this. You can technically leave it like that, but in order for the layers just to be even, I think it's nicer if you just square it out like this. And that's where we'll get started. Because we're going to be working on these for now, let's actually glue these top ones together just so it can dry while we're working. So what we're going to do, let's start with the very top one, is we just want the layers to stay together. So let me add like a little bit of glue in between these layers here, like this, and on this side, just a little bit, and also between these layers here. Like that. Right. And then same thing on the bottom one. Like this. Okay, so those can start to dry while we are working on these bottom ones. So the first short one is actually going to form just a pleat. So we fold it up and then we mountain fold down about like a third of the way, like this. That's about a third. And we can get that out of the way for now. This will turn into these points here. So actually maybe I need to fold a little bit less. That was like a quarter. This is more like a third. But we'll really worry about this one later. the main one we're going to focus on is the second short one here. This one we're actually going to fold in half as a pre-crease. So you can just fold it to the hinge and crease this one. And this detail is like a little tricky if you haven't done something like this before, but overall it's not bad because it's starting off just as a squash fold. Now, in order to squash fold this relatively cleanly, see we have this mountain fold here. You want to like poke that in a little bit. And from there, it doesn't really matter. Like the theory is that it kind of squashes evenly on each side, but again, no one's going to see the inside of this. This just helps it become clean. So I like to just stick my finger under a little bit like this and then start the squash fold from there by inverting the crease here. And I can feel underneath it starting to work. And once I have that, I can fold the pre-crease we have here and let it squash fold down like this. Now this is to create these 3 pleats we have like that. But in order to do so, if I just valley fold this one down, you can see how it like is directly on top of that one. We want it to shift, and I can pretty much just like change where it valley folds just by a little bit until it about matches the distance between these two, like that. But it won't be necessarily as large, but I can just try my best to spread it. And if I pull a little bit more, I can get it really close, but the more I pull, it's actually going to start consuming length from the flap above, but that's actually okay. This is another part of stretching this. It's going to start to creep up into the length of that other one. That's totally fine. And basically from there, I just want to fold back that pleat we originally had, and it'll kind of hold it in place after having consumed that length. And that's, oops, drop the model. That's how we get this triple pleat over here. Now you'll notice we have these spikes here, so we can fold those spikes. It's exactly like the ones we did down here, where we're just looking at the corner and mountain folding it. And we can swivel a lot of it, and it's going to kind of start to head into the territory of where we, took more layers, but because of the swivel, it kind of hides it underneath. So you can see it stretching a little bit, but yeah, not too big of a deal here. Just get those points with that rabbit ear-ish fold like that. And you can try to tuck away this if you want. It's underneath the layer, but it doesn't matter too much. And from there, if you want to just lock it in, what I recommend is take some glue and make these points nice and strong through the layers. On both sides. And that will help it. And the other thing you can do is you don't want to glue each layer individually, because then it'll be too flat and you won't see the nice details. But you can go a little bit on the inside edges over here and add just a little bit to the under layer. You don't want to do too much here. Again, it has a risk of making the layers a little too flat, but just a little bit to clean up the edge there. You can see totally fine. Great. So we have that starting to set. Now we can go back to the top over here. And all these ones are, and I'm going to start with this one. is bisector. Like this. And then from here, I'm going to fold a rabbit ear, but trying to keep those bisectors together to make the point thin. So if you need to glue it a little bit more, then you can do that. Or you can just try to get this rabbit ear. The base of the rabbit ear will be very close to the bottom of the flap here. So it may unfold, some other stuff. So just be aware as you're working on this. It's a little bit of an aggressive rabbit ear, like that. Right, and that forms the point. And then you're going to do the same thing on this next one. If you get a little bit of paper creep here, this is to avoid this paper creep, you just give yourself a small gap in the bisector. So you don't go all the way to the top point. You just give it like a little bit of a gap. That way, when you fold it in half for the rabbit ear, the layers don't stack on top of each other. So this is where, see, that's not even close to the point, but when I fold in half, it'll probably look cleaner than the first one, just because the point will appear sharper. And then the same thing from here, get that rabbit ear. And when you do this one, it might look like at first it's stacked directly on top of the other one. Now it's okay just to hit the creases like I'm doing, but you don't want it to be stacked on top because then it looks too close together, right? If you look at this one, these are nicely separated. The way to do that is you just do a layer manipulation. So instead of this being on top of the below one, you move it underneath the other rabbit ear. And it should hold itself a little bit depending on how you creased it. It kind of fights against itself like there and gets a natural spacing. But as I recommend to maintain it, you can add some glue and get to stay. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue in here. And we'll give it a clip just so we can keep moving along. Like that. All right, so we have that in place. We're not super worried yet about the placement of the shoulder. Again, a lot of this is going to happen after we figure out some more stuff. I think ideally we're going to do the head before we worry about the shoulders. And I think it's also easier to like do some of the dry shaping on the shield and the fingers before we get there. So while this is drying, let's do as much as we can in terms of dry shaping and gluing to prep it before we complete it all together with the shoulders. We are back, and the first thing I want to do is start with the hand on the sword side. So remember, we have the indent for the handle of the sword, but our hand is like way past the actual sword handle. So all we need to do is adjust it. And what I like to do is I grab the hand and I find like a layer that's about half of the layers of the hand to keep the layers even. And what I'll do is you can shift it backwards, and there's like a technical transition that could happen in order to do this, but basically you can shove this one backwards by adding a pleat, and the pleat will help keep the hand backwards, and the front layers are the same, so it kind of shoves this forward. but without adding a pleat through everything. It's only through the top layers. And what that does is it acts almost like a glove for our hand, which works. And it's puts our hand in the right position, right? So just a little bit back. Basically, I just want it enough where my thumb can reach the front of the handle. And because the handle, right, we can swivel it. This looks like just enough, just enough right there. Cool. So now that that's good, as you can see, I already started shaping it intuitively. It's just by curling this around. That's how the glove kind of forms. The next thing I want to do is, in order to shape my fingers nicer, it's good to glue all the layers so that they don't splay when you move them. It's just like what happens unless you have magic paper. So I'm just going to start adding glue in between the layers of the fingers. There's a lot of layers. The nice thing about this structure we did when we didn't sync the fingers is because we didn't sync the layers, a lot of the layers are still locked together. So you don't need too much glue for these fingers. You will need more for the other hand. And then when you glue these though, you don't want to stick the fingers together. You still want them to be mobile. So I always just like wiggle them to make sure the glue isn't sticking too much. And I'm being careful not to like trap all the fingers because we do want them to be shapeable. Now the thumb is a different story. We can add quite a bit to the thumb because it's on its own. So there we have it. Here's the thumb. Just pinch it together a little bit and we'll start to let that dry. Now the sword's kind of special. We're going to get to that in a little bit because of all the layers. I think I want to start covering the other side of the fingers on the shield side. And again, same thing. I'm going to reload my glue. Let's add some more over here. Okay. All right, we have more glue and I can start adding glue between the layers of these fingers. And these fingers, we did a lot of sync folds, so layers are all open. So we're going to need to carefully add glue. A lot of times I just add glue and I let it dry and hope that some of it soaks between the layers. But then when there's layers that are sticking out, when I'm trying to shape the hand, I'll just come back and add a little bit more. Because yeah, I spend a lot of time shaping, so I generally don't shape all at once. And that just works out for me. So that's what I'll recommend to you. Just get it started a little bit. Again, you don't want to glue the fingers together, so I'm pinching these to make sure that they're individual. Because we're going to thin these out eventually too. And I collapsed these very imprecise, so they're a little bit janky, so we definitely need to thin them so it'll appear cleaner. All right, so next up we are on the shield, and I think I did the shield on this one different. We're going to look at the big one because I think the shield's better. Okay, so here's the big one. Essentially what we have here is we have spikes out to the side, one on top, and then this like long one over here. And then like just a couple details here. These are minuscule, but we basically want this and these and this. Now these, I believe, are from, yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's from here. So if you look at the anatomy of our shield, we can see the top spike. It's obviously this one. We have the side spikes here. And then this one is a combination of this and this, but just shifted down a little bit like that. So let's do that shift really quick. All you have to do is really pull the bottom tab slightly lower, and you see how the layers are opening up here. And you just want to align it and squish down to crease. And that's our automatic transition unit. So now our shield is the right length, and just make sure it works with the rest of the shield. If you feel anything weird behind you, just squish it down, right? And then over here, we have this part of the shield. And I believe we can do, I think previously we had it to extend the length of the shield. I'm pretty sure that's what I did on this one, but it looks like we actually turned this into 2 more points on the side. So let's close this back up. And the way we're going to do this is we're just going to open up this layer and collapse it a little bit differently. So instead of it ending there, if we end the crease, let's see here. So I'm stretching it until we see this mountain fold under here. So we're basically taking 2 pleats back like this. I think we can fold that like this and fold over like this. And let's see if this gives us enough space when we swivel it to line up for those spikes. So it's like this, and we're closing it up like that. And then we're going to swivel it out to the side. And it lands about here, and I think that is exactly what we want. So as you can see, the shaping is very custom. I know we changed the crease pattern a little bit, mostly because I had forgotten to update it, I guess, when I did this, but it's very flexible. You could do different shaping if you wanted. And now these are what's going to form those side spikes over here. And I know they're very thin, and we have squared off points right here. So what we have to do is squash fold the corners in. And on this side, we don't really have to squash fold it. We can just valley fold it on the inside like this. And then on the back, just line it up in here. There we go. And we're set. So now we can start bisecting and gluing. So for example, over here, this is shorter now. So we're not really bisecting. We're just folding corner of the point to the corner of the hinge. And that will give us this unique shape where the top of this spike is different than the bottom of it in terms of angle. Let's get it to refocus. So let me mount and fold these. And eventually I'm going to be gluing the inside of the layers, refolding this so we can form those spikes, just like the waistcoat, like that. And then down over here, let's see, these become points. Oh, it actually is interesting. We don't, maybe this is not exactly the same because we, okay, so there is something a little bit different going on with the bottom one. And if we just bisect these, we won't get the wide shield, which is very interesting. But I think this is also similar to the waistcoat where we did some swivels on the underside to make it look like it's a point when it doesn't have to be. So remember how over here we had these, right? And we just shimmied them to make it look like the point was sticking out. I think we are doing something similar here. That's very interesting. So this might not be the exact same shield structure as the other one, because I'm pretty sure this should be here. But you know what? Sometimes things aren't as expected. And let me see if we can still mimic that. Is if we fold here, can we get a pleat? Basically, I'm just doing like a mountain valley at an angle. So imagine doing the bisector-ish or corner fold inwards and then just valley folding outwards. See if we have enough clearance here to get that. Otherwise, I'm going to reinvestigate how to do this shield. So we might need to collapse some differently. I don't think that's enough. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And I think I know the structure. We just have to collapse it slightly different. We're back and I figured out how to do the shield. Now, normally I would edit this out if I had to fix something, but I think this is a good lesson at there's so many ways you can shape, even by changing the structure slightly to achieve different results. So, you know, I believe the crease pattern was using this, which was like the original, to get everything like that. And all those layers, but in this one I went for the spikes to make it more like the actual armor set. And I like the shape of this one a lot. So we're going to change it. And it's not too hard. We're just adjusting some of the flaps. So we have our flaps up here. Essentially what we're going to do is instead of this one being 2 units long, I'm going to pull it open. You can see how it's popping the center here. And we're going to make it 1 unit tall. So close to the top of the shield, we have this grid line here. I'm going to pop this. And we're going to make new creases over here by just pinching it into a short flap. This should feel pretty familiar to some other things we've done. Short flap there. So this is now 1 unit. And that gives us space to, you can already see where I made the creases from testing it. But you might not have these creases. So I'm going to act like you don't. And we're going to open up the crease here. And we're going to make sure we pre-crease just a mountain fold across the top here. Just these 2 mountain folds is all you need. Like this and like this. And that lets you make like a water bomb base over here. And this will just pull into a flap, just like any regular collapse. This should be super, super easy. Now, because of our original pre-creases, it might seem like this is a petal fold to make a 1 unit flap, but we don't want that so that we can have the shape of the shield. So instead, I'm not going to petal fold that. I'm going to let it fold down and square off the side here. And this is just on the grid lines. Let me try to make that a little bit more precise so that we can have a wider shield down here. I don't know if this actually gets seen, but we're just going to make it a little bit wider so it lines up with the edge like this. And now this is pretty much the exact same structure as the waistcoat that we did, which basically shares those same bisectors. So now when we're up here, right, the hinge is up here. Because I dragged it down, actually, we can reuse that transition we made. Just pull this down a little bit. So we have this flap here, and then we have our flaps down here. And so these ones, we can mount and fold underneath the bisector. Again, it's not quite a bisector. It's just as high up as you can go over here. That's pretty much a bisector. So this one, you pretty much do a bisector, actually. Because we actually have some extra room from sliding it down to you can actually get the full bisector in here. So we have this shape, which again, very similar to what we have here, except we're going to turn it into this. And then up here, instead of squaring these off into those points, which you could do, the points being like these ones, you could do that. But instead, we're going to mount and fold them behind like this. Instead of being it squared off, we're going to make a point in the center. Like that. And this is like a super shallow point. You might be wondering, all right, boys, well, how did you get it so sharp on this one? And I'm pretty sure what I did is I took this, I opened it up, and I just like shoved it in. Shoved it in like a sink fold. And by doing so, it kind of will open up the rest. And I might have to unfold this. Right. So I'm just shoving this in. Or it's going to be like a swivel fold instead of a sink fold. I don't think we actually need the sink fold. I think we just need to swivel fold it like this. Right. And there's some stuff that happens here, but we're not going to care about it that much. It's just going to complete the swivel. So yeah, let's do that on the other side. I think this is actually what I did. So unfold this one. We're going to fold this back on the bottom. We're going to unfold it for now. We're going to open up this layer. And I'm going to swivel in to try to match that angle. And again, I'm kind of like really forcing just this corner to go in. Just matched angle. That's that mountain fold. And it's going to cause this whole area to swivel. Again, I'm not really caring too much what happens here. I do kind of want it to not be distracting. So if the layers can cleanly fold on top of each other, then that's pretty good. Again, if possible, doesn't have to be perfect. Like that. And then from here, now we can refold these bisectors on the bottom of the shield. Like this. And now we have this shape. We still need a little bit of work on this area to make it more pointy. And so with the rest of the swivel, I'm pretty much just going to try to add another swivel behind it to point it even more, and almost like a reverse fold. And that way we get some depth up this. So it looks like the point is sticking up on its own. Like that. And then, of course, we're going to glue it, and eventually in the center, it's going to mountain fold up like its own point. And even without the glue, I can kind of start it like this. And it gets started like that. And then on the bottom here, we do that thing on the waistcoat where we make tiny swivel so the point seems a little bit longer, right? Like this. Just trying to match it both sides. Again, we're going to need to add our glue first to get this to set. That's the bottom of the shield. Next, we have the top over here, which these ones will just be folding the corner behind to the hinge. And when I do this to the hinge, it naturally wants to swivel upwards to the corner here. And this is okay because we're going to be thinning out those points too. So I'm just going to let it swivel naturally. Like this. And again, we're going to glue this and it's going to make these turn sharper. For the corners here, we're going to pinch these in half. And that's going to thin it into a spike. And it's okay if it doesn't like fold too tightly because we want a little bit of depth on it so that it looks good. And as you can see, I have a little bit of trapped paper here, so I'm gonna undo that so the point is nice and sharp. Right, so we still have some depth on the shield, that pinch. And then on the bottom Over here, these ones are going to pinch in the same way. These ones can be a little bit thinner because they're going to be smaller points. I'm just pinching these in half, kind of like a rabbit ear. And then once it is together and I glue this in place, right, you can see hopefully the vision of this shield to this one. So we've done quite a lot. I think what I want you to do is we're going to glue these areas now. So basically glue the bisectors just like before, glue some layers in here and here, and we'll let it dry. Or in fact, maybe I should just show it. Okay, so we're going to do this very quickly. And then make sure you glued your fingers. And while we're gluing, the reason I'm hesitant is I like to glue a lot at once so that there's less time that we're waiting. But in this scenario, I think I'll show it a little bit just because there's a lot going on. So I'm going to undo this. I'm going to undo this. This is for the bottom of the shield. I'm going to add glue underneath this. Right. Fold up like that. Fold this here. Let this dry. Then I'm going to add glue in these swivel fold areas for the thinner spike so that it can be a little bit more maneuverable when we force this to be thinner too. It's a little bit janky, but it's not the worst thing ever. Try to get that as sharp as possible. And we're going to glue the top point up here. In this top point, we have more layers up here, so I'm gonna glue between these layers and the ones we fold, as well as the swivel folds. So I'm just unfolding what we did. Get some glue, add it here, add it here, add it to the swivel fold. And also in this shield, it's safe to add some to the top here. And as well as in the bottom, but let me make sure the top is good first. Pinch that down. And is there any layers here that need it? Maybe a little bit in there, but let's fold this swivel fold first. Fold these back up together. Swivel fold. Bisector. Like that. And yeah, these little parts here, let's add some glue under there so they stick when we fold the bisector. It'll also make the point sharper. They're here. Actually, maybe I can fold that down like that. All right, and then lastly, we can do this portion here. We can add it all in this area, keep it together because we have some more layers going on. And also in part of the swivel. And I'm tempted to glue it in position first. Just so you know how it's kind of hanging off there. I kind of want to glue it to here to keep it steady, but I don't know. I think it's safe. I'm gonna let it set for like a couple seconds and then let's fold the points in, which won't stay too long, just so I know where it is, and then I'll position it. Yeah, and basically where I'm adding glue is under here. And then like on this other side, so let's add a little bit more. Okay, so under this area, and then in the middle over here, and press it together like this. Okay, so now you can kind of see the shape, and basically when we thin everything else out, it'll look like our shield that we are going for. I think technically this will pleat up just slightly so that we have a longer spike here, but this is definitely good enough for now. All right, so while this is drying, I also want you to glue the handle of here. And now this handle, I'm going to use a little bit of methyl cellulose just so there's a little bit of water content for compressibility. So if you want to water your glue down a little bit for this, it means you have to be a little bit more careful, but it's going to help make the handle not too thick. Now we're going to, maybe we just do this all now. Okay, let's just do the shield now, or the whole sword. Basically, this middle line is like super thick with layers, especially when this folds on top of it. Now, I'm not going to worry about the edge over here of the sword, because if I put methyl cellulose here, it's going to warp the sword. It's going to look messy. If you see how flat this one is, that's with a technique I'll show you in a bit. But we are fully concerned about just the center of the sword for now. So try to get this only in the center layers and just avoid the edge ones. Try to get it in a good amount. Because it's a little bit watery here, now it's going to soak through the layers and let it compress. I also want to put it in just this center unit too. Again, adding to the compressibility. So this one, it's already relatively tight, but adding some in here will help it stay even more. Okay. And when you do this, do both sides at once, so you don't have to go back over here. Now, I'm putting it a lot in the middle of it. You can avoid doing the edges if you want, because the edge layers are more prone to rip. And likely, if you go like 2 layers in from the edge, so basically not this surface one. If you just go a little bit on the inside, it should soak through anyways and be okay. But if it's not, you can always add more later. Okay, so that's the other side, a little bit in here, again, just in the center area. That and like this. Okay, and then from here, we're going to do, for the sword part, we're going to make sure it's all centered, like that. You're going to squeeze really hard as this dries. And on the bottom part, right, it's very open here. You want to squeeze this too. But you also want to pinch that wrap that we had earlier. And that wrap, it's going to stretch out some of those layers a little bit, but you want to try to get it as clean as you can. So you see there, I have some layers shown, but it's not too many. So you want to try to get both these just locked in here as much as possible. And you'll feel that because it's a little bit more wet, you have that compressibility. That's going to help a lot. And with the handle, so the handle's going to sit in the hand. So I think the handle is okay to use a clip on. If you want, we use 2 clips here, so I'm just careful. But on the sword part, because it's a big flat surface, I would avoid using clips for this. I would just use your hand and hold it in place until you start to feel like it's staying on its own. and just let it be. And again, don't worry about these side ones. We're going to glue those with methylcellulose in a different way. All right. So like that. We're going to let it dry. We did a lot. We're going to let it dry and we'll come back when things are dry. All right. We are making really good progress. I've let it dry a little bit. It still could probably dry a bit longer, but steady enough, right? And so in the meantime, we can move on to prepping everything else. Starting with the helmet. So we're starting to move to the head. Here, I think we're going to want to do dry treatment for this. And we have these two flaps in the front. These are the ones that form the chin and the helmet up here. And I think it's important to prep them with some glue on the inside and let them fully dry. It's going to make it easier to shape, especially since this one's small. I think it's actually going to be kind of hard to get full details. But we're going to try our best, you know, and it should still look good. Actually, on the small one, I did more of the helmet from the sword and shield and just with spikes on top. So you can see that, which this still looks cool, but it's not exactly the Rathalos armor. So, you know, we're going to try to do this one because this visor is super cool. All right, so we've got the glue in the first area. Now we have it up here. Open it up a little bit. Get in here. Let these dry while we're waiting. So that'll prep us for when we work on the helmet. Right. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to prep the arms. So we have the shield hand and the sword hand. We're going to start with the sword hand. It's a little bit easier. Don't forget we have this crimp here in case it pops out. So we want to add glue to the top of these layers here. And that's because when we're shaping it, it's going to shape underneath this shoulder pad and it's going to be like this direction. So it's kind of like the leg where we're going to open up from the back to get our width if we need more. And that's where our arm shaping will come from. So yeah, very similarly, we are going to add glue between these top layers. And it's starting to get close to the shoulder. I'm not running it like into this area. We want to leave that open for when we are ready to close the shoulders, kind of like how we did the hips, right? We waited for the hips for everything to be ready. Let's get some more glue here. This is like when we did those thighs, pretty much the exact same process where we're adding glue in here, letting it set. And then I'm going to close it up a little bit like this. So I'm just squeezing it together like that with that crimp. You can even add a little bit of glue probably into there. Like that. Okay. That way it'll stay. So I'm squeezing it. And then I am going to open the middle area up here and press it down like this. And I can kind of feel areas where I need more. I'm gonna add a little bit more under here. Up in here, basically I can feel where the layers are sliding, which means it doesn't have glue in there, right? See, you just add it in, let it dry. We'll go from there. So I'll let that one start to set and look on the shield hand side. Now the shield hand side, we have to deal with the hand first. So our thumb is here. This is the back of our hand ideally, which is kind of already turned towards the shield, but we really want it to turn more. So we're going to take the hand, we're going to twist it down, and basically it's a valley fold that goes across this way. And it's not going to fold entirely, so part of it is going to have to swivel. So I'm going to start pressing here. You see this area here? This is going to like swivel squash, like this, in order for the hand to turn correctly. And now when you look at the shield, the hand is like more in line with how it should be. The other thing we're going to do is we had prepped some glue on the fingers. And I kind of mentioned that you'll feel the layers that aren't glued. So we're going to progressively work on these fingers and glue them. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on the fingers because I don't think it's worth it. And I have so many tutorials on this exact structure of fingers. So it's really not worth going to. Basically, once they're dry, you're going to fold these in half again to thin them. And just like make them hand shaped. So literally just like let's take this one, for example. And at this point it's too small. So I can do it without the tweezers, but I will block the entire frame. So just take the tweezers, fold in half. You can already see it makes it finger shaped. Right. And it just makes it a little bit thinner. So it's a bit better to be viewed from all sides. You just do that with all the fingers. And then the thumb, you just put the thumb in a thumb position. So right now it's kind of just sticking up with the rest of the fingers, but it also needs to be thinned, probably. So I'll fold it in half and just stick it out to the side and make sure it's looking like a thumb. You know, but yeah, so go ahead, do the fingers. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's more just getting it ready. And then the top of the shield arm will be the same as, like after we've done all that, now we can add the glue as well. Just like the sword arm. Right, like that. And I know this part looks kind of weird because it's, you know, on top, but essentially you can just adjust it. You can just like push it up later once we widen it. And it's also blocked by the shield, so don't worry too much about it. But again, we're going to go underneath and widen up here. We can't pull this one as straight as the sword arm because we have the whole shield structure here, which we've also glued. So it's just like about here, should be good. And I can add a little bit more closer into the shoulder. Not all the way at the shoulder, but just a little bit closer. It's like right around here. And that'll help us shape it. Okay, so we have that ready. Let me think if there's anything else we can kind of prep. I think so far it's looking good. I think now while we are waiting for stuff to dry, we can. Oh, okay. Let's do one more thing. So we can start a little bit on the head. We're waiting for this to dry for these details, but let me show you how the horns work. So you see we have a big horn in the back with these side panels, and we have a bunch of spikes. So 3, There's like a row of 3 here. Sorry, it's not focusing. We have a row of 3. Oh my goodness. Row of 3 and then 2 up front. Okay, it's not focusing, but sorry, that's getting me dizzy. What we're going to do, this first set of 3, we're going to pull on the side ones like this. So we have these 2 flaps here, right? In order to get these to stretch out a little bit more, we want to basically squash this center one down. That way you can actually see these spikes. So I'm going to kind of open up this area here and try to squash it down, but I want to squash it cleanly. So I'm going to not just push, I'm going to pinch the top of it like this and press down like this. Because we can't actually like make a longer flap. We just have to make that one shorter. So these will poke out to the side. Like that. They're going to be very small. I know they look long here, and I just did a lot of work compressing the head until these ones are like pointed in that sideways direction. Like this. Right, so this is definitely like the size comparison. They get really small. And then even from here, maybe I would start gluing. Maybe not yet. Maybe we don't have to do that yet. But try to get this squash fold like not too messy. It's a little messy. That's just gonna be how it be because it's small. But something like this. Now this next one up here, these ones we want all 3 spikes. So what we're gonna do here to separate them is actually just do a bunch of bisectors. So it's like bisectors and swivels. So I'm gonna start by trying to bisect each layer on the side up here. So you can see I just did a valley fold like that on this flap here, but it's not laying flat. So here I kind of have to either swivel it or squash it. In this case, we're going to swivel it. So it folds here, and this acts kind of like the fingers, is once we swivel it on this side, we can actually drag it outwards. Oh, this is hard to show. Drag it outwards. But we also need to do the other side. So if I flip it over here, if I try to bisect the top point, you can see it's starting to fold. And so I need to also fold the other one. Actually, this is more just like a valley fold at this point. And once both are valley folded, this can actually stick out like this. And then these edge ones, we can just like valley them behind like that. And we have a point right there. So let's do the same thing for the next one. Let's valley fold it. Valley fold the bisector. Do the same thing on the other side. That lets us pull out that one a little bit, and then we can valley fold it the other 2 layers behind as well. And now we have the 3-prong row of spikes. And so I want you to glue these because these will be set. Now that I'm thinking about it, we might be able to get these ones elongated by also valley folding them kind of in a similar way. I think maybe that's, instead of squashing it, we have to valley fold it first, but I don't think we can. Let me try to do this again. And I don't think we can because of the front, but we can try. So let's lift this up a little bit. because we can't cross into this section, so I don't think we have that option, but we might be able to try a little bit of like a hybrid. So I'm kind of doing the same thing, but I'm trying not to go too far on this. Yeah, I don't know actually. You can do this at your own risk, but if you do thin it, you will be able to get a little bit more length out of these. But ultimately, it's like you're kind of just going to have to pull and squash this down and try not to push into the other flaps. To get these spikes out. But I think what does help is if you, like while I'm pulling and doing the squash fold, I am going to try to add a swivel to thin these using just the bisector on the outside spikes. Let's see if this works. That's one. Let's do the same thing on this back side of it. Okay, yeah, that helps a little bit. Now we have this one. Same thing here. So we can't really start bisecting from the middle one because we are squashing it, but we can bisect the outside points that we want. Like this. And then on this side, re-put that squash fold down here. And I want these ones like as out to the side as I can. So these ones will be out to the side, and then these ones will be out to the side, but like a little bit up, and then the center one is just up. Like that. And now for the back of the helmet, we've got the long spike, and then we have these two squared off flaps. The squared off flaps, so remember we have a rabbit ear for the neck here. That rabbit ear actually lets us swing these flaps out to the side, but in order to do so, we have to rabbit ear this back flap. So this back flap is going to rabbit ear, and it's going to shorten it just a little bit, but it'll let you swing it out. And if you can close up the rabbit ear and the neck, it will let you get more of that out. So let me get my clip, kind of hold the neck into place. This is much harder small, but I think you can kind of see what I'm doing here. All right, so now it's out to the side. Now, if you look at this one, it is out to the side and back a little bit, but it's at an angle where like it just works with the rest of the helmet. So we're going to do this once we do the visor and stuff, but basically a lot of this, you see how it's sticking out here? A lot of it's going to compress in, whether it's above or below, and these will be waiting to pull to the side like that. In addition, we still want to thin this point out. So with this rabbit ear, I am actually just going to valley fold outwards like this. And I think I'll wait to glue any of these in case I need to adjust it. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of step-by-step for the helmet. I'm going to show you how the details are done, but ultimately it's going to be spending a lot of time working on it until it looks, you know, acceptable. Okay, but at least we have all the points like set now, and we can just wait for everything to dry. So let these arms dry. In the meantime, I'm going to expect you at some point to do your own fingers. So go ahead, do those fingers. Now that the shield is done, I think we can work on this a little bit. So yeah, this area is dry. I'm actually gonna mount and fold this up to kind of hide it a little bit more, and refold the pinches. And this one needs to be glued a bit more, but these pinches will be, these are smaller. I want them like up here. So let me add some glue. Right. And now what we can do is we can start, let's get this focus. Okay. We can start lifting and making this part more 3D. So I'm going to use my tweezers just to try to fold this in a little bit tighter. Like this. And that's also going to shorten this sword to make the point stick out like this. And also, like, this shape's okay, but I made it a little bit more angled on this one. See how it's just angled like this? And all I did to do that is I just valley folded or mountain folded these corners in to the point, but we don't have too much shield here, so I don't want you to lose too much shape or too much width on this shield. But yeah, you can, if you have enough here, you can get it if you're comfortable with that. Okay, and then with that, we also want to pinch the top. Right, and because we had prepped it with glue, I'm able to pinch it and the memory kind of holds for the shield. And then I'll probably go in with a little bit more glue afterwards on the underside and just like hold this all in place. And then we're going to do the same thing for the top. Like that, right? And here as well. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the bottom of this one here. All right, and that's the shield pretty much complete. And yeah, you can tweak it, make it a little bit cleaner as you go, but even with very fast pinching, pretty decent, right, for just pinching it. So go ahead, finish your shield, let the arms dry, let these dry. I might need to add a little bit more on mine. And we're getting real close to to finishing this off. This, I think the very, very last thing actually, even after we do the shoulder over here, very last thing will be this sword. And quick spoiler for the sword is basically we're going to lay it back flat against a flat surface. So basically the surface you use to treat your paper, we're gonna lay it on that and we're gonna like retreat it flat. And that's how you get a really nice finish like this. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience because you have to like elevate your surface because there's a raised handle. And you have to like put it in a place where you can watch it dry and it won't move. And it'll be really important to watch it dry to make sure it doesn't warp. Otherwise you have to do it again. So yeah, we'll do that at the very last, just because that's kind of a very involved detail. But we are really close to being done with the shaping. All right, so let's get to the helmet now that things are ready to be folded. Again, if you can't do this with full details because your paper is too small, don't worry. Just you can try and just make it simpler. The hardest part will be like the visor. So if you can't do the visor, just do like an overhang visor like this, which is just like this horn shield tutorial. So go ahead and watch that if you haven't done that. But otherwise, I want you to observe the top one. We have this like M shape. This is really hard to do. If you can at least get this like visor part on top, which is basically formed by like pinching, and I'll show you how to do this. And then these are basically also pinches, but vertical, right? And then this line is just the edge, which we tuck under. So first thing we're going to start with, you know what? Let's start with the bottom. Actually, the bottom's going to be easier. This chin, let's start with the chin. The chin's not too bad. So the chin over here, we're going to valley fold up. And it's about 2/3. So basically try to leave about 1/3 of this. And the difference between 1/3 and 1/4 at this small is going to be really hard to determine, but try to get it about 1/3 and then match it on the other side. I did too much. Right? And just try to make them look the same, at least. And the reason we're not going all the way is because now we need to make a really thin valley fold through both layers on top of it like this. And this one will go to the center. And so I'm using the tweezers because it's a little bit easier to control. And you want this like line, and you can't really see it on this tiny fold, but you can see it here. That's how we get this line here. And the paint just helps accent it, right? So you do that on both sides. I'll show you one without tweezers so you know it's possible. Right? So that's our chin. And what you saw me do just there is we're going to be squeezing the head kind of like this. And we want to round out the chin. So I'm like pushing like this underneath. And then that's how you get these to stick out. But our last step for the chin is it's too pointy. So we're going to valley fold up a little bit. And if you're using a larger paper, you can do like a little swivel to make it nicer and clean and match. But at this point, it's so small, it already looks okay. So like that. It's writing up a little bit too tight. Like that. And then you see I'm pushing, and that's how we get our chin out like that. Right. Okay, so now here's for the hard part. Here's the visor. So the visor is going to come on top, and you can see how between the back of our helmet here, we've got like that much space. This is, we're going to be using this to like stretch the head a little bit in order for the chin to come down and the visor to be like up here. But we don't want the head to be too big. So what we're going to do is about halfway through this layer, we're going to make mountain fold and at an angle. So I'm like going from the corner up to the half and then back down. So like this. Like that. And then same thing on the other side. And what happens when you do this is the middle will stick out a little bit. And I want you to pinch the middle. And that crease is the center crease here. Right? But now we need that ridge for the top. So we're going to pinch further on the mountain. We did and try to like crimp it down a little bit. So I'm like pulling here and I'm torquing it down like this. See that? And now to get the M, what we're going to do, or what we're going to try, is I'm going to put my fingers here and like, I'm going to push, I think it's middle and pinky is so small. I'm going to push down with my index finger and like use my thumb and my middle finger in the middle of these ridges to like make the M. I might have to do this one at a time. Just kind of make the M shape here like that, right? So you have that M shape. But now, that's just to get the creases. Now we need that one last set of creases on the side here. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to take my tweezers a little bit. And at the top of that M, it should have started like a place you can start a mountain fold. Just going to torque it a little bit and pinch. And again, if you're using any paper smaller than mine, you're probably not going to be able to do it. Just very tiny thing like that, right? Even I'm barely able to get it. So if you can't get this, do not worry. Just try your best. And even if you don't have this little detail, it'll still probably look pretty good with all the spikes. Try to make that clean. If you can pinch it really hard, a lot of times it'll just mark the paper just enough for you to be okay with it. Okay. That's probably as good as I'm going to get mine even. Right. And now what we're going to do is we have these extra parts sticking out. We're going to mountain fold these behind and under. So the reference is from where we made that third point here. We're going to tuck this corner under. Like that. Tuck this one under here. If you don't have these points, just tuck the corner in a little bit so that the visor looks okay. Tweezer really helps here. Okay. Okay, so that's the visor, right? Now, what we need to do is it looks very flat, right? We need it to be round. So it's going to be a combination of methylcellulosine, all these points, and again, like pressing here, pushing down here, and squeezing all at the same time. I think we're not going to worry about the points for now. We're just going to add methylcellulose and some glue in like under here and in these layers, and just try to hold it as much as we can. So I'm going to get a little bit of MC, and this is like mostly glue, just a little bit of MC or a little bit of water. Add it in here and add it in these layers. This squash fold thing. Okay, and once you feel it a little bit, I'm also going to put it in the rabbit ear of the neck, just the top part of it, so we can like really preserve this. So we kind of have one shot at it. From here, without messing up the rest of it, I'm going to pull this down and try to round it out a little bit. And again, the head will probably be smaller than you think it should be. The biggest mistake I see is people make the head too large. So if it feels like it's too small, it's probably correct. Okay, I think as I do this, I'm also going to add some glue to hold our detail. So that little tip on the corner is not staying on that side. So I'm going to add some glue here. Delicate process. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's close. I think on this one over here, I spent like at least 2 or 3 hours just on the visor, getting it correct. And it's bigger, so like I could adjust it a little bit more freely. On this small one, there's not really too much I can hold, but I'm going to hold this, let this dry, and then we're going to worry about the back spines afterwards. So we'll come back when this is dry. You gotta be patient. All right, so I've given it some time to dry, and yeah, it's not perfect, but overall not bad. I think I wish the visor might be a little bit lower actually, but we're gonna adjust that later. We're just gonna leave it be. We're gonna try to now finish off all these spikes on the helmet. So what we're gonna do is add some glue to all of these spikes here. And yeah, what I want to focus on is just kind of overall coverage. So even like under this layer and in here. And that way we can try to get these to set as much as possible. So I know we've done this quite a lot over this course of this tutorial. There is definitely a lot of spikes and spike related structures on this model. Okay, so let's start here. This got unfolded. Let's try to get this. Get these. Like that. And for the positioning of these spikes, what I recommend is look at a reference of my fold, or look at a reference of the Rathalos armor from the game Monster Hunters to see where to put it. Maybe use my fold because it's not exact to the game, especially if we do it smaller. But that's kind of how I'm getting an idea on the placement of these spikes. For the center one here, let me add a little bit more glue. This one we're going to want to rabbit ear so that it's facing like this way, similar to this one behind it. So I'm going to mountain fold that and press it forward so it can be kind of centered. And that means these other ones, which will stick out a little bit more to the side, need to follow suit. Okay, so I know I was a little bit out of frame for that, but basically I have these two up front. These ones I've thinned with the glue and basically went sideways and just like curled them up a little bit so they appear a little bit smaller, but also kind of staggered. And then this one I pinched and pushed forward. And so from the front, it's looking like this, which is pretty good. I kind of want these even more to the side. If I can, I would like to bring them down a tad, which means moving the head a little bit, or to mask. But if we can't get that, that's okay. And then here, add some glue to this rabbit ear. And I don't want it to stick too far out the back. So you're still trying to keep track of like the overall proportion of the head. So if you can imagine like the back of the helmet or back of the skull, it should only be like around here. I won't go too far past. And then now we can start working on the sides of the helmet here. So I'm going to add some glue into here. And also under a little bit. Because now we're concerning ourselves with the placement of these. There we go. So we added the glue, I squeezed them, and I want them to be towards the head, but like not down like that. So they are going to like gently lift up so that it's out to the side. And I might need to let the glue dry a little bit more for this to fully set. And it might take a few tries to get the adjustment correct. But this is about how I want it. I can feel other layers lifting on the side. So I'm going to add some more glue to the back. Really lock this in. And we can see from the front. It looks good. You can see the angle's a little bit wrong. So like that. And then also squish it in a little bit more without squishing too much of the rest of it. It's all a gentle balance to get it correct. Okay, so I think from here, I have it pretty good, but this area is like oddly lifting. So I need to add some glue in there and get it to adjust correctly. So now we're working in with the neck a little bit, and I think it's fine to start gluing the neck. Not the bottom of it, but at least just the middle of the neck, as well as the top. So I'm going to add some in here. And on this side. There you go. Close this. And also try to close this. It's small, so it's hard to grab, but like I'm trying to close this gap a little bit more here without squishing the face too much. Okay, there you go. So I kind of got it, but I squished the face a little bit too much. I have to push down here a little bit to widen it without letting that go. And I think it's just going to be a delicate balance of me guiding it, but this is relatively correct here. Not bad, not bad. I think while it dries, I'm going to use this clip because it's a little bit thinner than the other one and won't interrupt the neck. So I'm going to leave it like this and let it dry like that. And we are back, and the head has been dry. So now it's pretty much staying all in place. And I think for now, this is as much as we're going to work on it until we finish the neck. Obviously, even you can see me messing around with it. There's always things to tweak, make it slightly better position. But overall, this is not bad for the size, of course. All right, so before we complete all the shoulders and everything, I want to get some sense of idea for the arms. And so I know I had mentioned that I kind of want to do something like this, where like the shield is up front and the sword is up and ready to go, kind of in this position. So we don't have too much to do. All I want to make sure of is that I do like a proper crimp for bending this arm. And what I'm doing, you can see this valley fold here is just kind of natural. I'm just going to reinforce that. And remember, if we widen this arm here, so now using that, that's something we can push against and kind of fold around, or not fold around, but fold round on this to get it into the position we want it to be in. So here we want the elbow to be defined like that. And we can actually place it under the shoulder just to kind of see what it look like. And it'll be something like this. All right, it's up in front. This looks pretty good. I got my fingers. So yeah, that looks pretty good. And then for this other arm with the sword, we still want a little bit of an elbow. So it'll be like around here, and you can bend in on here and do like a 3D crimp on both sides to make the arm round. So I kind of just pushed in there and bent it. You can see how that kind of makes a little joint here. And then finish that off by rounding out and thinning the hand a bit, curling the fingers around the sword. like that, right? And then again, just seeing how it'll look with the shoulder covering. Looks pretty good. Cool. So that's the game plan. And now we can put these into place. So let's grab our glue. And this I am going to mix with our methyl cellulose. Similar to what we did with the hips. Once it's mixed, I'm going to be placing it inside the layers over here. Let's move this way a little bit. So, and in the neck and under these layers, especially in this area, and then also in the shoulder. So these layers with the shoulder, because we're going to be putting the shoulders into place. Top of the arm, inside the neck, pretty much anywhere that would need to be moved or adjusted that we want to hold in place. So I call these tension points a lot in my video, but it's pretty much like if I were to push this and I want it to stay forward, right? So that's where the new memory comes in. That's where I want some methyl cellulose so that when it dries, it stays there. And then to be super sure, we're going to put it in the back as well under these layers, and that's going to help us. And also underneath in the back here, these two flaps are pretty much just done. They just will help cover the back. As you can see, they're already just kind of covering the back. That's all they really do. So we can use that to our advantage here. And now we are going to push this whole section forward into the neck. Now, I am going to use this clip just to hold the neck together. I want my head to be looking towards the shield because I think that makes sense, right? That it's looking towards the shield because it's guarding against the attacker and looking for where it's going to swing the sword. So I'm going to do that. Then I am going to make sure the shoulder is in place. And honestly, for this, you might need a lot of wire and a lot of clips and/or, I guess, in order to get this to stay. So, okay, maybe let's undo the clip for now here. I think I'm going to prioritize the shoulder first and then the neck. I'm going to use this one for the shoulder. And because there's things in the way, I'm actually just lifting up this shoulder pad. I'm eventually going to shape it down after these are together. But yeah, this is a lot at once to try. So you're going to probably need some things to help you hold stuff into place while you're working on it. Or just do it in separate parts. So I might even have to come back later and readjust some things because it's a lot to do all at once. So this is good, but now I need the rest of it to follow suit. So let's see if I can do that. And a lot of times when you start pulling something the other direction, it might unfold something else. So that's what makes this a little bit difficult to do. Okay, here on this arm, I want this closed here. So I'm going to take this clip, go through the top like that. This I want lower. Like this and tilted. This I want faced sideways like this, actually, because the shoulder is turning. So this is actually kind of okay as is. Just need it in place. And rounded. So this one I can probably use a wire. Let's reuse the one we had before. That. And this arm, I want it to be in here. This is actually very difficult to get aligned. With everything else. So I think I'm going to have to hold it here while everything else dries. And then I'm going to adjust the arm back outward. So this is like definitely too thin. I'm going to hold it here, let it dry, and then just ease it out. That's my strategy. So that way I can have the neck. And I like to use these Velcro ties. I've been using them in other tutorials. And these will hold the model a little bit more softly. So wrap this around. And it provides a more even radial compression than, say, wire. Where wire, it only compresses where you kind of bend. And it's up to the malleability of what it holds. Not necessarily a radial force. Like that. There you go. So that's attached, and then just want these layers to squeeze together a little bit. And I'm using the clip against the table to push the neck forward. You want to make sure the neck is properly forward because it's been sitting back a lot. And it should be pretty close to where this neck guard is. Now, I haven't glued the neck guard yet because the neck guard I'm going to push in after all the shoulders are set. But that's what we have here, and I can carefully adjust some things so I can re-round this a little bit after we kind of squished it. But I'll probably have to wait for after everything just to get it back. I also squished the head a little bit more than I would have wanted to, but this is a good position to let it dry. And what I can do as well is add some regular glue now to solidify this pose while it's in this pose. Also, I just realized I want to use the rest of this wire to hold this a little bit better. A little bit higher up like that. So now I can add some glue like here and especially behind along these creases where there's some new connections. I'm going to try not to put it in areas I have clips or wires just because I don't want the clip or wire to accidentally glue itself to the model. That would be bad. But places where there is like connection between arms and the shoulder pads, is all fair game. And I'll add a little bit more underneath the neck so that it won't undo itself and I can get this to dry correctly the first time around. Like this. All right, and we're gonna let it be. We'll come back when it's dry. All right, so we are done with this being dry, or 3, 2, and restart. 1, 2, 3, start. And we are back, and it should be dry, and I can let go of the clip here. And yeah, that is locked into place. This is kind of the fun part. We can slowly undo all these clips and the wire like this into everything and basically free our model, which is pretty close to completion. So that's exciting. Let's see this area, if our planned work with this compression. All right. And as you can see, it did freeze this arm in this position, which we do want it a little bit less scrunched, but now we can do that all on our own. So I can just take this and lift it up. There we go. So now it's a little bit less stiff. Same thing with the shoulder. You can move it out a little bit like this. And that's the nice thing about methylcellulose is now I can kind of adjust it however I want. I can even get it wet again and adjust it even more if I so need. But now I can just round out the rest of the shoulder like this. And we are looking good. There we go. You tilt the head a little bit more. So we are pretty much just in the final steps of shaping. And so there is one more thing I do want to do, and that is for the neck. And we don't have to do anything too much. Honestly, it looks pretty good from here. But I can just take a little bit of glue and run it under this neck guard here. Like this. And we can just lock this into place. So from here, we have it nice and round, and I can just add a little bit of depth here. I'm just giving it that curve. Nice curve like this. Now that everything is set. And let that stay. Yeah, this is looking really good. We have these really cool pleats on the shoulder pads. All right, so now we're ready for the last part, which is finishing off this sword. And I'm gonna get set up for it. All right, so we're back, and I kind of have this apparatus set up with a cutting board that I'm used to treat the paper and something to hold my Rathalos armor. And the intent is that it can be at an angle where the sword can be treated back onto the cutting mat, but there's something to support it so I don't have to hold it in place manually, because we don't want to ruin our shaping. So I've lifted up the cutting board. You know, this step is kind of optional. You can just go with dry glue and glue it down, but in order to make it like really clean, this is what I found works. And I have some methylcellulose with the PVA kind of mixed up, and we are going to act like we're treating it onto this cutting board. Now, this cutting board isn't that sticky, so that's why I'm okay using the PVA with the MC, because I'm not too worried about it sticking to the surface. But if you know that your cutting board is a little too sticky, be careful when doing this, because you don't want to accidentally glue your entire model to the cutting board. And I'm even going to do like a little mixture of both. So I'm also going to use some regular glue on the inside layer of these flaps here. Maybe I should have done this beforehand a little bit, but we're going to get a little bit on the inside here. Try to get it like relatively even, like that. There you go, press down like this. And really let it set onto the surface. And if it's not wanting to stick under here, probably need a little bit more Rathalos on the surface. Now, this is a very delicate process, so likely you will have to monitor it and hold it in place a little bit, even if you have a display stand like me holding it up, because you want to make sure it doesn't peel too early and that it doesn't warp while drying. So yeah, take some time and make sure this is okay and let it dry. And it'll be really nice when it's all done. So go ahead, try to replicate something like this and see if it works out for you. The nice thing is if you mess up, you can just try again. So if it warps, you can just reread it and try again. Just be very gentle. And we are back with the completed Rathalos armor. You can see that treating it on that surface made it nice and clean. So it looks like a really cool sword. We've got our pose, you know. Still, you can add some more shaping if you'd like, but this is looking really good. And I think this can just finish off the tutorial. We pretty much covered everything, but I always recommend, you know, spend some extra time, see if you can customize anything to your liking, or just make things a little bit cleaner. You know, try to hide any additional like layers, and it'll look even better. So yeah, that is the tutorial for the Rathalos armor. Once again, this is one of my favorite things I've designed, and I think it just works well together with how three-dimensional the armor looks and the options for shaping. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I have, and definitely if you fold it, post me on or tag me on your social media posts so that I can see your fold of the Rathalos armor. Thank you so much for folding along, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.
All this origami, all this origami, all this origami got me going kamikaze now.